Strong and dangerous winds are picking up in Northern California, where the Kincaid fire is burning. Officials say gusts could top 80 miles an hour, which will likely cause that fire to spread. As a precaution, 180,000 people are under evacuation orders in Sonoma County.
Tonight, Los Angeles communities caught in a whirlwind of fire. The Saddle Ridge fire exploding overnight. More than 1,000 firefighters from multiple departments in an all-out battle against apocalyptic flames, fueled by those howling Santa Ana winds.
A huge portion of California is under a fire alert tonight. The warnings cover 25 million of the state's 40 million people. We're talking about hot, dry and windy weather that is whipping up extremely dangerous fire conditions. A new fire broke out late today in a canyon about an hour north of Los Angeles.
Within minutes, these hillsides exploded overnight. The inferno could be seen for miles as flames raced across tinder-dry grass and brush. Driven by 60-mile-per-hour winds, the fire burned the length of a football field every 3 seconds, sparking fire tornadoes and torching several homes. Farm animals were trapped and firefighters overwhelmed.
You can see how the high winds are really whipping up these flames. The embers are flying at times. It's actually been quite terrifying.
At one point, the erratic flames surrounded first responders and news crews. Our only option to drive through the blaze.
We have to ask for their help.
We were guided through the thick smoke, and it became clear everyone needed to get out fast.
Wow.
It was outpacing us, and we just couldn't really keep ahead of it. It's always these fall months that are the most damaging, the most destructive.
Here in California's wine country, crews continue to battle the fire with 10 air tankers and multiple ground crews. But for some, it's too late.
Good morning, Whit. You know how devastating these fires can be, and the man that owns his home, he described for us what life was like before this fire. We're standing in his kitchen, pretty much all that is left. He just bought an espresso machine. This is where his wife and he have their morning coffee, and this opens up to the living room, which now opens up to the sky because the roof is completely collapsed as the fire engulfed this area. Everything else is indiscernible. This TV, well, all that's left of that is the blackened frame behind us. We're about an hour northeast of Los Angeles. This is one of the homes destroyed in the Tick fire, which continues to burn in the hills and canyons around us.
We are sensitive to the fact that people are unable to go home, but that decision is based on your safety.
This Ring video showing residents fleeing as the flames race towards their homes Friday morning. You can see the blaze towering over them in the hills nearby. We caught up with Matt Green, who's seeing his home for the first time since watching it burn from the highway below.
I looked back and I saw the roof on fire and the solar panels caught fire, and I mean, you're not going to stop it. It's too late.
Just 2 years after his family moved into their dream home, it's now a total loss.
I own a company that installs home theaters, so I do all my programming and work at night in here. And I had tens of thousands of dollars in there and couldn't grab it in time.
So this is more or less your workshop.
Yeah,
and
gym, workshop.
It's total loss.
Totally gone.
He recalls the mere seconds they had to gather whatever they could and get out.
Honestly, I couldn't think about timing. It was just go.
Snapshots off their Ring security camera show what his office space looked like before, and then as the fire approached, and then as the flames engulfed the home.
Saved their car jersey. That's good.
Dangerous, fast-moving wildfires that broke out this week. The Tanaja fire, as it's called, was first reported as 25 acres, and now it's nearly 2,000 acres that have been scorched.
Another explosive fire is burning in Sonoma County's wine country. That is north of San Francisco. Homes are destroyed there as well, and thousands had to actually run for safety.
But one of the problems that firefighters say is something called the Elsinore effect, which gets its name from the nearby town of Elsinore. What happens is in the mornings you get winds blowing offshore, so basically north to south. Then in the afternoon that reverses and they start coming the other direction. So those shifting winds are what kick up those embers, kick up those flames, and that's exactly what happened yesterday.
This morning, with fires already burning, critical red flag warnings in effect through Monday, Northern California is preparing for the worst. Much of the region anxiously anticipating unprecedented conditions as the state's largest utility company warns of massive rolling blackouts.
We are preparing for what is likely going to be a widespread safety shutoff across our service territory to combat the risk of a catastrophic wildfire.
Nearly 850,000 customers across 36 counties could have their power cut for days as officials forecast the most severe scenario in decades. As the area braces for what officials are calling an extreme historic wind event, peak gusts potentially reaching 80 miles an hour.
In extreme wind events, firefighting becomes fairly ineffective.
Firefighters still racing to get a handle on the Kincaid fire burning in Sonoma County. At least 2,000 people have already been evacuated.
Pacific Gas and Electric has shut down power to almost 1 million people in an effort to prevent more wildfires. Another 1 million people could lose their power as well. And a 747 global super tanker arrived in Sacramento and is ready to jump into action at any moment. With the huge plane and other firefighting aircraft, state officials say this is the biggest pre-positioning of firefighting equipment the state has ever had.
Helicopters and air tankers in a full-out assault.
That's 11,600 gallons of retardant, and when the fire line hits that, it just stops.
On the front lines to the fiery back roads. Crews from all across the West racing to protect homes. These are the men and women fighting fire in the most dangerous conditions, sometimes even with their hands. At the Kincaid fire, the biggest in California, 4,500 from 10 different states trying to keep the fire here from growing, many of them on grueling 24-hour shifts.
A couple of days we were pretty tired, being out on the line all night.
Back at base camp, they sleep in tents when they can, sharpen their tools, prep their trucks, then fuel up and go back out to find more hot spots.
Firefighters using saws to hack into gated properties.
Is that your house?
Hail Mary, full of grace.
This woman, suitcase packed, on her knees, praying firefighters can save her home.
How do you make it through 24 hours nonstop? You do it.
Some crews now working on the fire for their 6th day in conditions that would push almost anyone to their limits.
We're kind of in our battle rhythm right now, as we like to call it.
But to those in harm's way, their work is unrepayable.
The house is still here, Lord. Thank you.
And now, in an area still without power, gratitude is written by hand.
If it wasn't for the firefighters, what do you think would have happened to the house?
This old wooden structure would have torched as quick as one of these oak trees, you know what I mean, if they didn't hold the line.
Open the valve!
Tonight, those with homes still standing are praying that firefighters will continue to hold their lines.
And here at this massive base camp, crews are getting as much rest as they can before what will become a chaotic night. Meanwhile, there are already thousands of crews out there in the hills bracing for these winds that we're starting to see pick up. And this is not a question of whether this fire will grow. It will grow. It's a matter of whether these crews can contain it.
As the Kincaid fire in wine country rages, a dire forecast calls for winds that will blow embers into more towns and ignite more blazes starting early Sunday morning.
Something's going on just in the last hour. We've gotten 2 different mandatory evacuation orders.
Within minutes of the text alerts going out to 44,000 residents of the towns of Windsor and Healdsburg, traffic is snarled and gas lines snake through streets.
We got the evacuation order this morning, and we didn't think nothing of this at all would be happening last night, and so here we are.
Oh, that's Mister?
Yes.
Residents, including Dana and Robert Naples, were given several hours to evacuate.
It's very disjointing to kind of pack everything up, but I'm glad they gave us enough time to think about it and, do so mindfully.
People gathered their precious belongings. For the Naples, their wedding album and dog.
It's scary,
People acted fast. So many had been directly affected by the Tubbs fire in 2017 that killed 22 people and burned more than 5,000 structures, including where Dana Naples taught.
My school burned down actually in the last fire.
I saw it coming over, and so we just got out and got on the old highway, and my house was gone.
My daughter and her husband lost their home over there in Wickiup 2 years ago, so we've been through this.
Now they're seeing similar weather conditions and aren't taking chances.
2 years ago, one of this state's most destructive wildfires tore through these hillsides, fueled by winds like these. Around here, they're called Diablo winds, Spanish for devil.
We're not getting a lot of rain, and
there's so much forest area out there, rural area, and it's just dry. You know, it's like a kindling out there. Once the fire goes, it just takes off, you know.
Anthony Solano picked up a generator to prepare for what is becoming another new normal here, planned power outages. In bankruptcy and facing a reported $30 billion in liabilities, the state's largest utility, PG&E, started cutting off power in risky weather preemptively this month. It's a controversial move that's affecting millions of people and an untold number of businesses. Restaurant owner Jen Bennett and executive chef Sean McGrath sat on the empty patio of their restaurant in Calistoga Saturday afternoon, planning for their lights to go out.
We've been closed 3 times this month for periods of 2 or 3 days at a time. Sean gets to drive back and forth to Santa Rosa picking up dry ice every day to keep our walk-in cold and keep our temperatures down, but we aren't able to open. 21 employees without work. Obviously us without an income, and a lot of perishables on their way out.
They canceled 67 reservations this night. Bennett calculates the losses, including wages, at nearly $14,000 for last week's blackout.
I'm pretty angry as much as everybody else. I mean, I think you try and be, try not let that anger get to you. And
what are you angry about?
Well, just like, I think the shutoffs in general and the lack of maintenance that they've had.
Most of downtown Calistoga is fortunate enough to have a generator that kicked on a few hours after the outage, but the restaurant Lavina is out of its range, as are these residents in this mobile home park for people over 55.
No one wants a repeat.
Right.
No one wants a repeat, but is this really the only way?
Do you blame PG&E?
Sometimes, yes, I do.
Okay. Like, what do you think could be done better in the future?
We got to get better on the brush control.
This is exactly why there are so many evacuations and power outages happening here. There are firefighters all throughout these hillsides fighting these fires.
And while PG&E tries to justify its safety shutoffs to millions of people without power, it can't explain why the faulty transmission tower that it suspects started the most destructive fire of the year was left on.
Overnight, that rare new video showing the spark which incinerated 12 homes, damaged 5 others in LA's pricey Brentwood neighborhood. Take another look. Officials claiming high winds carried a tree branch into a city power line. Those sparks igniting the flames, fueling that fire. The charred remains of structures spanning nearly 650 acres. Over 20,000 residents remain under mandatory evacuation orders.
I understand how frightening it is to live in a canyon where these things can happen.
And this morning, Pacific Gas and Electric blacking out about 1.5 million people in 30 counties to prevent high winds from toppling power lines and sparking new fires.
Video from a fire camera purports to show the moment the fire ignited on Thursday. The possibility that Maria was sparked by a re-energized power line is under investigation. That fire has destroyed more than 10,000 acres and is not contained. The forecast does call for calmer winds today, which may help the firefight. But for homeowners confronted with the increased fire threats and evacuations, there is another danger: the inability to get insurance.
Most of the homes destroyed in California's recent wildfires were covered by insurance, but now the owners of the homes left standing.
When the wind starts to blow like this, do you get concerned?
Always, yes.
Are being financially burned. Frances Mann Craig is among at least 350,000 Californians whose fire insurance policies have been canceled. She had the same coverage for 18 years.
I've paid thousands and thousands of dollars in premiums and insurance and never gotten a cent back.
Now she's scrambling to find coverage, as is Kathleen Hart, a 14-year policyholder.
Never made a claim, never had any issues.
And Pato Coffee.
You've lived here 25 years. Have you ever had any trouble getting insurance before this?
No, not at all.
But as wildfires in California get worse, insurance companies are limiting their exposure in fire-prone areas. They've paid more than $24 billion in claims in just the past 2 years.
Can you understand it from the insurer's perspective? Last year, they paid out almost double what they took in on premiums.
That's why you're in the insurance business. Sometimes you rake in the dough, and sometimes you pay people that have invested their income in you for years.
Fire insurance is still available, but at an exorbitant price.
Just under $19,000.
A year?
A year.
$19,000, and you were paying $3,800 before?
Correct.
Rising premiums are pricing people out of their homes, despite efforts to fireproof their properties. O'Coffey even installed her own water tanks and fire hydrant.
They inspected my property 3 years ago and gave us an A+ rating, but they wouldn't even pull that report out of their files.
No one's come to my house to look at what I've done. We are constantly trimming trees, cutting back trees. We have a volunteer fire department in our neighborhood.
It sounds like you're very proactive homeowners.
Yes.
It's awful, and it's frustrating.
California Insurance Commissioner Ricardo Lara says it's time for action, except
we don't have that authority yet.
Many people are receiving cancellation notices right now, and this is the peak of fire season. They're terrified.
Without expressive statutory authority from the legislature, our hands are tied.
You're the insurance commissioner. You should have some power to do something.
We are asking for that power.
until then, homeowners like Francis feel powerless, one fire away from financial disaster.
So do you feel betrayed by your insurance company?
Absolutely betrayed.
This week's fires will surely bring a flood of new claims, and insurance isn't just important for rebuilding, it's required if you have a home with a mortgage. And just imagine trying to sell a home in a fire risk area that's virtually uninsurable.
Tonight, the historic Santa Ana winds. The National Weather Service issuing its first ever extreme red flag warning. Winds not seen here in more than a decade. And we were there as firefighters worked to keep the flames from shooting up the hills in Simi Valley, coming within 30 yards of the Reagan Presidential Library. This newest fire, called the Easy Fire, erupting early this morning, north of Los Angeles.
Fox News alert, there is now a new wildfire in Southern California that is inching its way towards the Reagan Presidential Library. Winds there are gusting above hurricane force winds. It is the latest in what's a series of wildfires burning up and down the state.
This highway is probably about 70 yards wide, and look at that tree go up right now.
All day, enormous resources poured into chasing the Easy Fire, but too often it ran too fast, incinerating over 1,600 acres. The fire encircling the Reagan Library, an iconic spot in Southern California, the whole area incinerated.
And inside the library, Air Force One, smoke and fire seen through those windows. One of the workers there, Melissa Giller, telling ABC News Tonight there were as many as a dozen people sheltering inside when the fire broke out. She describes what those firefighters are working so hard to save.
We have an actual Air Force One airplane on display that served 7 U.S. presidents. Every speech Ronald Reagan ever gave, every handwritten note, every memo, every photograph ever taken of him. There's so many priceless items within our walls. I couldn't even name them all.
In an instant, these Simi Valley and Moore Park residents came face to face with an all-out emergency.
We can smell the smoke from our house. The fire department's going back and forth. It's just been kind of like a disaster zone.
The Ventura County Sheriff's Department rushed thousands of people from their homes as the Easy Fire crept closer and closer into several neighborhoods. Some even went door to door telling people to get out fast.
And when I got out of the shower, there was a text to go look out on the balcony off my bedroom, and I could see it on the ridge above my house.
Tears started coming down, and you think what to do, what to take, what documents is important. Everything goes so fast.
And firefighters' quick action from the ground and the sky made all the difference. People here say they're grateful.
They're angels on this earth. I mean, look at, they're all on standby here, and it's just, and these winds are unbelievable, so God bless them.
How long have you been out of your house?
About 2 hours.
How does it feel to be back in?
It feels good that it's there, that there's no damage or anything, no electricity.
We're going to turn now to that wildfire emergency in California. Take a live look. Those are the flames in San Bernardino. The state on edge again this morning as those fierce Santa Ana winds whip through.
Night firefighters grappling with multiple fires. The wind this morning sowing inferno after inferno. the strongest Santa Ana wind event in over a decade, delivering destruction.
Just grabbed everything I could and we left the house this morning.
If it was to jump one of those roads, we would have some property in danger here.
In Chula Vista, 10 miles south of San Diego, fields of grass surrounding this riverbed engulfed in flames. Squads of firefighters marching in to battle the blaze. Helicopters racing in to get those hotspots. Over 100 miles away in Fullerton, flames fueling evacuations. This view from above showing the roaring fire. Fiery limbs whipping in the air as choppers overhead drop water and race to extinguish that blaze below. And nearly 30 miles from Fullerton, another fire. Here, towering flames from the pallet fire seen from the sky. Those firefighters' water hoses seem to have no effect.
Firefighters doing what they can to put the flames out, but this is enormous.
We witnessed those devastating wind speeds that propelled this fire.
Wow! The intensity of that is absolutely enormous. The heat is overwhelming.
Arriving along this highway as the fire galloped downhill, giant tankers dumping that Phosgene.
Right now we're about to get dropped on. You can hear that plane coming through. Look out!
But it didn't stop the fire from leapfrogging the firefighters and that highway.
Go, 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 go! Go! Yeah, come on. Get down. There you go. Come on. There's the road right. Stay here. Go back. Come on. Come on. Slow, 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 slow. Go. Go. Come on. There's the road that way. There's the road that way. Come on.
Oh my God, we are driving through fire.
It's all right. There's nothing we can do.
We're driving through fire right now. We can't see anything. Do you hear how loud that is? I'm videoing.
We haven't seen something like this since 2007. So again, just to give you an idea of how unusual the Santa Ana is, it's been about 12, 13 years since we've seen such a strong wind event here in Southern California.
When you guys hear about that critical red flag warning that hasn't been issued since 2007, what does that say to you?
It says to me the winds are going to be so high and so fast that the fire is going to be wind driven, and it's going to be pushing farther and faster than what we've seen.
Tonight, this team telling me they are ready to keep going, knowing the path of these fires are impossible to fully predict.
We try to save them all. Like, we can't always be in the right place at the right time, and we do the best with what we got.
Which explains why you could have a home standing here and the one behind us gone.
Absolutely. Some of it's timing, and some of it's what we can't account for when the fire generates its own weather.
More than half a dozen fires have burned more than 90,000 acres across the state in the last 10 days. More than 115 structures have been damaged or destroyed.
We're looking to get back into the daily routine, get back into our own beds.
Hundreds of thousands of evacuees have returned home. The state's largest utility, Pacific Gas and Electric, cut power to millions of California residents to prevent down power lines from sparking fires.
We have world-class firefighters doing world-class work every single day, and I couldn't be more proud of them. What we don't have are world-class utilities.
California's Governor Gavin Newsom was critical of the move by PG&E, calling for a restructuring of the already bankrupt utility.
While the latest fires remain under investigation, wind-related damage to power lines has been implicated in a number of those fires. Rena, those winds are expected to die down by Sunday night.
Dry, hot, and windy weather. The perfect, dangerous mix that could fuel even more fires in California.
We are in the middle of a big fight. We're about a week into this, and the end is not yet in sight.
Hundreds of firefighters up and down the state are still battling 13 wildfires. The latest blaze, the so-called Maria fire in Ventura County, has charred more than 10,000 acres so far. Some good news this weekend. Santa Ana winds have weakened considerably, but the National Weather Service says the air is still very dry with humidity below 10%. And peak wind gusts in some parts expected to hit up to 35 miles an hour.
Please stay active and engaged. Please have a plan and be ready to go at a moment's notice.
This week, some of the strongest winds in several years fanned massive flames across the Golden State, and the threat is not over yet. State fire officials say California is still recovering from a 6-year drought, and the dry landscape combined with hot temperatures and historic wind events are major concerns.
Fire season in California is no longer a season. It's a year-round operation, be it in a northern, central, or southern part of the state. We are responding to wildland fires year-round, 365 days.